Afternoon, everybody. Christian here. I need something. All right. It's let's see. This is the third video of a series that I'm doing where I'm bringing out old prophetic words the Lord gave me in some dreams that He gave me several months ago, but I hadn't put them out yet. If you haven't watched the first, please go watch that first. They're not put out in the order in which I received them because I don't recall the exact order I received them in, but they do all kind of have a place. And again, I've put out others as well that are just as important, but these three are three that are extremely relevant to my own personal situation. And so I was like, well, I don't want to share these with other people because for various different reasons, but primarily I thought they really applied more to me than to you, but there are elements in them that do apply to you. And some of those will be like principles within the dream. Some of them can be giving you insights on how to interpret your own dreams. And some of them just show you, hey, this is a path in which God can bless you in that you didn't know about. I've shared before, and I'll say it many times in the future probably, whatsoever God does to me, He's going to do to the church. That's one of the words that God gave me. My name is Christian. I'm just a picture of what God's doing to the believers, those who follow Christ, right? So things that you see me moving in, these are areas, as I've said before, that God has given to the church. Many of them don't know that, but that's the truth. When God first told me some of these things, I didn't even understand them. They were way over my head. I had like an 8th grade education at the time. And God built me and trained me up, and I'm still being trained up, and developed me so that I could handle things that He was speaking to me. And the same will happen to many of you. So this dream, like I said, is the third of a series of 3 dreams that I've had about several months ago, and I need to share with you. This particular one, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first one that I had. And it also tells you, or it tells me, this is happening now. And so it's how I know, or one of the ways that I know, that all of these 3 dreams are happening now. What's happening now is that we are in a season where God is bringing to pass things He's spoken in our lives, fulfilling promises, okay? And there's some sadness in that. Let me take a moment here. And the sadness is that once it's passed and you tell people how hard it was, the walking in faith, they won't understand. They won't believe. They can't grasp how difficult this walk has been. Many of you guys know I have been walking this walk almost 27 years for some of the things that God has spoken over my life. That has been I have not dealt with anything as difficult as I had dealt with over those 27 years. It's been the most difficult thing I've ever had to deal with, and I've been through some stuff. So to say that is saying something. But I've also gained immensely. The education that I gained in the time that I've spent with God, the revelation and the relationship, you wouldn't trade it for anything, right? And I feel kind of sad because it's like, God's been telling us all these things, and it's just kind of building up this, list of promises, and you're walking and you're not seeing any of it. But now as He starts to, check them off of the list, eventually the list gets emptied, and your time is up. And I don't know, there's just some weirdness to it. There's just some, I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, in this dream that I'm going to share with you, there are parts that I understand and there are parts that I don't. And it's important whenever you have a prophetic dream and there's a part that you don't understand, be sure you include it. Even if it makes very little sense or no sense, add it anyway. But for me, when I give the interpretation of some dream that God's given me, we know in part and we prophesy in part. That's what the word tells us. So be open to the concept that you don't know everything. There are hidden elements in the dream, things that will show up that you didn't see coming. So you have to be flexible to some degree, not saying you don't hold a certain standard with prophetic people and things of that nature. I'm not saying that. I'm all for that. You know that. But there's still room for, I'll try to show it to you in the actual example. So in this particular case, I have, in the second video, if you haven't seen that one, go watch that one before you watch this one. I'll link it right there. But in the second one, I had the dream. I got up and I searched the internet for what I had seen, because what I had seen in the dream I had never seen before. But I thought maybe this already exists. It's possible that it doesn't, and it's going to be invented later, but maybe it already exists. Maybe I can find it and give me some insight. When I looked, I found a couple of different platforms that I believe would fit, or like I said, I don't know exactly, because I only saw it for a split second, but I saw 2 different platforms that could fit what I saw. In this particular dream that I'm going to share with you, I saw something that I didn't know exactly how it worked. And so I got up and I researched what are the dates of the Fed meeting. And when I did that, I wrote down, the first thing I wrote was the date that had already passed, that we had already experienced, and then the next one that was yet to happen. So this is actually when I had the dream, right? The date would be in here. So that's when that dream was placed. So that was several months ago, like I had said. But there's a different mind in society today than there was in society back when I first looked this information up, okay? And I'll try to explain that. But that's kind of what I'm talking about also. When all these things get fulfilled in your life and you tell somebody, you won't believe the things God did in my life and how hard it was to follow God and how many times I wanted to quit and God said, no, keep coming, They're just going to not really understand it the way it was for you when you walked it out, Just some thoughts. Anyway, so I had this dream, and in the dream, I saw myself, and this is the part I don't understand. I saw myself laying down on my daughter's bed in her room, like the room she had when she was a kid and she lived here with us. And I was laying on this bed and I was watching the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, and he was doing something. I don't recall the exact words he used and things of that nature, but I know he had just raised interest rates. And I knew in the dream a few things. I knew that I had the money to move and start investing, and the Fed had just raised rates. And I knew in my mind that there was going to be 2 rate hikes. And he had either just done one of them and there was one yet to come, or he had just done the last one. I can't recall which one in the dream. When I woke up, I couldn't recall which way it was. But I knew that he was done and I was going to start buying. And I had the money to do so. So I was watching the Fed. He had made an announcement, and I knew that now was the opportunity to move on this market. Checking my mind to make sure I got everything in the dream that I wanted to get in there, every detail that I can recall. I believe that was it. So anyway, when I woke up, my first thought was, okay, when are the Fed meetings? How long are they? between, meetings. And so I knew they weren't exactly on the same day, everything. And so I went, I Googled it, looked it up. And like I said, we'd already had the March 21st, 22nd meeting of this year, 2023. And so the next one was going to be May 2nd to the 3rd. And so I was like, okay, we already had the interest rate. What was it? 4.75 to 5%. That was the spread there. That was in existence because the Fed had raised rates to that point. But at that point in society, people were not speaking highly probable that the Fed was going to raise rates anymore. In fact, they were expecting by the end of the year, the Fed would be lowering rates. So people were nobody saw rate hikes continuing. That wasn't a strong probability at that point in time. And it certainly wasn't a strong probability of 2 more rate hikes. And there had been no statement by the Fed at that point of 2 more rate hikes or anything like that. So how is it that I knew in the dream there would be 2 rate hikes? I don't know. I just knew in the dream. And so I knew at some point in time, something would be stated in some way where I would know there are 2 rate hikes to go. And that by the time the Fed was done, I would already have the money to move in the market, take advantage of the scenario. Now, I also understood that, this could be interpreted in different ways. Somebody could say, well, Christian, how do you know it wouldn't be a different time? And maybe the market does whatever, and then down the road, it does it again, it sets up a second time. Sure, that's possible. But the point of God telling you things is so that you can move on them, so that you can have some insight, some understanding about what's coming. So it's not like he's looking to trick you and fool you and that kind of thing. So instead, I kind of just go with, all right, God, show me this thing. If it starts to materialize, then it tells me something, and I should then move on that to the best of my ability, right? So in this case, I didn't really have enough at that point in time to move on it. It was weird. I don't understand why I'm in my daughter's room. That's weird. And then I still don't understand that. And then with watching the Fed, I really wasn't one to sit there and just pay a great deal of attention to what the Fed says from one meeting to the next, But I figured, well, I was watching the Fed, so I better start watching the Fed. And so sure enough, I started watching the Fed. And the next time the Fed came out and spoke, I paid very close attention to whether or not he will say something regarding 2 rate hikes. There's some reason that in the dream I knew about the dual rate hikes, and yet here I am without that knowledge. So that knowledge has to be imparted to me in some way. And so sure enough, like I said, the second rate hike came along, and again, there was no statement of 2 rate hikes, But I think it was the third one coming through in this one, or it was after this, I can't remember. Anyway, in one of them, he does state, and society started to say, we think we see 2 more rate hikes coming, that kind of a thing. Well, then the Fed came out and he actually used the phrase, I can't remember the exact wording, but basically he was saying there's going to be, we see this one and possibly 2 more or something like that. I can't remember exactly the wording. And then, or he said, we see this one and 1 more or something that would break it down to me to where there were 2. And he actually used the word 2. So I knew at that moment, okay, this is a God dream, because you're seeing the thing just the way it was told to you happening before your eyes. But I still don't have the money. So that means between now and then, I will have, right? Now, interestingly enough, the Fed did one of the rate hikes and then paused. And so this time has gone by, but he's not made any move. So I believe there's still yet 1 more rate hike to come. And then it'll be done. Or at some point in time between now and then, the money will be in my hand, and I will then move on it. But interestingly enough, a little side note for those finance guys out there, the Fed fund rate right now is 5.5%, or 5.25 to 5.5%, which makes a lot more sense when you think about the first video I shared with you on the first dream of the three. Because in that one, I don't move until the price falls to a 6% yield on that company's stock, right? Which makes a lot of sense. If you can get a risk-free rate at 5.5%, why would I take on any risk to buy into a company's stock if it's not greater than the yield that I can get from a risk-free rate? So that makes sense, that everything would line up that way. Now, I know that there's other ways that a person could be benefited from a company's stock rather than just dividend yield, but I need the cash flow to do the second step that God showed me. So in my case, that makes perfect sense. But it's just a little side note, little detail there. But somebody recently asked me, like literally minutes ago, how do I know these things are going to be soon? And the answer is right there. That's one of them. But that's not the only thing that I've seen that's shown me this is soon, this is soon. In fact, I think we're in the word now is proper. And by now, it's happening right in front of us. It's manifesting. It's coming to pass, right? Now, I don't see the finance side of it, but I don't have it in my hand, the finance side of it. So that still is yet to happen. But it will happen within those two windows. So those things will line up the way it was in the dream. And then I will go do what I saw in the first dream. And then I will go do what I saw in the second dream. And I know from other dreams the Lord has shown me, and I share with you guys, that it won't all happen in one day for everybody. We won't all on the same day get a breakthrough. We won't all on the same day have a financial, wealth transfer kind of a thing. But it will happen. And there was somebody else that I shared their video. They were showing that they had seen 3 different women, each one was giving birth, the other one, I think one was giving birth, the other one was, nursing, and then another one was dealing with someone who was like almost like a year old, or 9 months old, I think she said. For me, when I saw that, it's like one upon another after another, one after another after another. So what you're seeing here is a season of giving birth, the promises being birthed again and again. And so in another one of the dreams that I had actually seen, I saw somebody else after I had my wealth transfer. I was standing before them, talking to them, and one of the two walked down a driveway, their driveway, and they found a coin that was just laying in the gravel. Nobody had seen it up to that point, but he picks it up. And he doesn't even realize what he has at that moment in time, but I tell him to go get it checked out in the dream. The point being that there are multiple people who are going to be experiencing their breakthrough that God has spoken over their lives, and in various different ways. But the ways that I'm speaking of, these are paths that God has. The funny thing, just to go on a little bit of a sidetrack here, the funny thing about God is he has paths that we don't perceive, that we don't know exist. For us, certain paths we can perceive, and we walk them all the time. And we tell other people to walk these paths because they're easily spotted, they're easily understood, like go to college, get a degree, and do this thing. Those are things we see and we understand. But God has paths that go through Red Seas and things of that nature. Jesus tells Peter, go down and cast your line in, the first fish you pull up, open its mouth, and there'll be a gold coin in there. They have paths, they perceive things that we don't perceive, So if you're like, Christian, God's telling me something that sounds impossible, yeah, that's the path. That's just the way it is, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light, and he also refers to himself as the path. The word of God is the path. Whatever he told you, that's the path. Walk it. And right now, I'm telling you that we are in the season of birthing of God's promises in our life. Now, those people who are clinging to something that's not true, that's not God, that thing will not happen. And that's how you'll know the distinction between the two groups. And that's all I have for you. Thank you for your time. God bless. Take care.